We asked the
Irish Stallion.
Mr. Schwartz, last meeting, 2 days ago, we skipped a meeting between council, where the council discussed a few items, and one of them was to find out where we stood vis-a-vis our requirement with the master plan, in the sense of where we stood with our obligation, and we charged our attorney to go back and look at the status of where Teaneck was with the master plan, and our attorney did both the research in sense of our recent work in relation to the master plan, number one, and also regarding the law in relation to the master plan. And he wrote a memo to us, which you will read, explain, take questions from us and any members of the public.
I can read through it, or I'll just go through it point by point.
I don't know if everybody from the public has it or got a copy of it.
Well, it's a legal memo that we usually don't provide unless it's released by the committee.
All right, so why don't you give a brief overview then of it.
I'll say it like this. I was charged to review the current status. You're required to, one, adopt a master plan. That master plan has 4 things that should always be covered. I'll get to that in a second. But time-wise, you're required to adopt a master plan and then to re-examine that master plan every 10 years. Now, that re-examination form of a full review, or it's just a basic re-examination that's presented by, can't hear me, I'll speak up. Yeah, I don't know. Is it working? And that re-examination can be done by a re-examination report. I'm just going to ask everybody if they remember. In 2017, Mr. Price presented before this board a re-examination report that was adopted by this board. That would make you, in basics, compliant. You are now compliant until 2027. So you do not need to re-examine or review your master plan until 2027. A master plan in general is given a lot of things that need to be covered, but there are 4 basic ideas. 1, state the plan purpose. 2, your land use element, so your zoning map, your planning map. 3, your housing plan element. And 4, your relationship with other plans. Now, what I should ask everybody to remember, about a couple months, we've adopted a housing element already. Now, the master plan is a living document. It will always be in flux. In my short tenure here, you've adopted a housing element. We've also heard testimony, and probably come at some point, maybe come up some point, not only a fair share housing element, but your recreation of the space element. So there are always elements that are coming in, adopted, reviewed over those next 10 years. It's also one of the reasons why just a re-examination might only be necessary, because we're always in change. Director Price comes here, she'll tell you, hey, listen, we reviewed this area as we just did with the house and the large property, forgive me, over by Route 17, I forget the name of the property, where he says, listen, that's a good place for an overlay zone. So that our zoning map also becomes, again, a living thing within the master plan, and it's always in flux, always be changing. Again, why just a re-examination, as we did in 2017, might just be the best thing for us. So again, your current compliance, you are good until 2027. The basic ideas are covered. Now, the 2017 re-examination wasn't just a quick letter review and said it's fine. Mr. Price gave you 13 different areas of the master plan that he said, listen, these are things that the town needs to work on. 13 objectives that should be pursued. I've listed the objectives, but as you can see, some of them, again, going backwards, number 13 is your fair share housing element. That has been completely revised since then. So we've adopted a new fair share housing element. Conservation, recreation, open space. Again, we've heard testimony on that from the open space professional that we are discussing. We'll be moving forward on that and somehow. Recycling, again, is issues that have come up, and if it does come up, we'll review it. Historic preservation, that is also one of those things that does get reviewed. I know that we've always considered historic preservation, and we've always considered what our future plans are for zoning and what can be taken to consideration, especially when it comes to the idea that we might do overlay zones or those kind of things what's available. Community services is really about where we find places that will help our community. Circulation is about traffic flow. That again is always something that will come into consideration, not only in overlay zones, but in every application you get. And we're always considering within those applications these 13 issues. Decline in the one I did want to speak about was the decline in non-residential tax rateable base. It's been identified that the commercial tax base in this town is declining. There's just a lot more residential, commercial all over the state. It's just a decline. It's just not there. Bricks and mortar stores are just not in demand as they used to be. But there's something you should consider, that our rental of rental units in town is going up. That is considered, those are considered commercial based for tax purposes.
The record reflect Mr. Swartz, Deputy Swartz.
That is something to consider, that as you do take in not purchase condos, but that would go towards your tax bases for homes in town, but commercial spaces we would consider your rentals, which we have taken on 2 or 3 quite large rental developments. Your expansion institutions, the 2 big institutions in town are Holy Name and Fairleigh Dickinson. Fairleigh Dickinson is stuck on pretty much the same lot. The Holy Name has expanded into satellite areas in town. There have been applications that we've heard and things that we've been looking at. Your housing stock is something that we've been working, that you have been reviewing and working. There have been applications before this board that do affect what single-family homes and what can be done with those. Most effectively, you guys have reviewed and have stuck pretty strongly to the fact that we do not subdivide. It's something that's encouraged and because it meets what the master plan has said. Master plan also will set certain basics, things that we want to see, where we want to see them. Again, we are, in every application that comes before us, moving towards meeting those goals set in the master plan and keeping in mind that the 13 goals set in the 27 re-examination will follow the goals of the original master plan. Pretty exciting stuff, right?
Yes. Just to put it in perspective, there's 13 items that were re-examined in 2017. In perspective, is it like 13 out of 20 items, 13 out of 100 items, just to get a feel for how much we're grappling with?
So what Mr. Price does in the re-examination, he says, listen, I'm going to look at your master plan. Take from those 13, take from that master plan what I believe needs to be progressed. And he comes up with these 13 items, not 13 out of 20. He just identified within our master plan what is happening, these 13 things that we should be forwarding. And this is your planner, and your planner said, let's work on these 13 moving forward.
Right. The reason I asked that question...
Howard, can I just correct something? It's not 13 items that he examined. He examined much more than 13 items. And of the 50 items examined, these 13 need to be worked on. In other words, the others were in good shape and didn't need to be worked on.
These are his 13 recommendations.
Yeah, I'm just trying to say, well, we're looking at the whole pie, is it just one small slice? And in a sense, because I look at these 13 items, and I think it's a pretty comprehensive amount of stuff that we have to go through that needs to be reviewed, reevaluated, and determine exactly what our goals are.
And these 13 items are your goals, right? So you
Yes.
look at them as your goals and say, listen, this is what we've now striving to move forward. You pulled on a planner's reviewed, this is only 2 years ago too, so, and I should keep in mind that within the last 2 years, there have been some big application, but not so much that we've gotten so far away from the master plan that we should do a full review. But I mean, since our was done, the other big rental, I can't think of the name.
1500 Teaneck Road.
Yeah, Avalon, thank you.
Right. But my question to you is, and what your statement is, you're 100% right. We've really not approved much in the last few years. However, is it about what we approved or what's been proposed and what's going through the process, which is therefore a lot of things?
It would be both. And the other question is has the nature of what's coming down become so outrageous that maybe we should take in a re-examination? I don't see that, right? I don't see that the zoning, that there's a need for a zoning change. I don't see a need for some massive overlay zones. I don't see a need to change any areas within your master plan. It doesn't need both the master plan that you have, and this isn't, I should also bring up that the 2017 reexamination wasn't your only reexamination. You did one in 2011, you did one in 2014?
14, 17.
11 and 14.
11 and 14. So this is something that you've been pretty good, and as you, I mean, Teaneck, have been pretty good about keeping up on. And when it comes time to re-examine, you re-examine. Mr. Price and your, before that it was someone else, has been pretty good to give you those points when it's time to say, hey, stop and review. Are you there, Nat? I don't think so. I really don't think so. So it's only been 19, 20 months.
Thank you. This, in a sense, is because we're seeing some changes in terms of streetscape, this, that, and the other. I assume that what we're doing is we're saying that we need to reevaluate it to determine if we have to continuously, what I call spot zoning, because that's what's got us to the stage where we are now, saying if we're doing so much spot zoning, which is against the grain, then you have to consider, is that going to become the new norm, not the new norm, etc.
The question you have to ask yourself is, have we done so many waivers, taken so many
Exactly.
properties and you know, combined them, broke them apart, combined them, that we've gotten so far away from the master plan itself? Again, I don't see that. I don't see that. Maybe we've had one big development, but we haven't had 13, we haven't had 20, we haven't had 10 over here, 5 over here. And I'm just picking random numbers. You could have 4 big developments that will change the nature of those areas. But the only ones that I can see coming down, they're still within commercial areas. Maybe the commercial area will change a little bit because you've gotten a multifamily dwelling, but that's still not changing the nature of it. The question you have to ask yourself is, has the neighborhood have we spot zoned neighborhoods so fundamentally that maybe we should review? Have we said, okay, we've knocked down a very large, just giving as an example, not anything that's done, but we knocked down a very large garden apartment area, 10 of them, to where we put up so many single family homes that maybe they shouldn't be multifamily areas anymore. You know, we haven't done that. We really haven't done that. This board has been pretty conservative. This board has been pretty good about staying consistent and staying true to the master plan that you have. And when you do get away from it, you do look through the alternative ways of laying down overlay zones or things like that, where an overlay zone is not a spot zone in the fact that it's being considered, right? You've brought in your planner who says, okay, wait a minute, it's not just a spot zone, I'm not just going to do this. I'm going to consider the whole area and consider that this might be a place for an overlay zone. So just to say that it was a spot zone, it's not exactly right, because spot zoning implies that when someone coming here made an application, you say, okay. But no, an overlay zone is a little different. It's been considered, it's been weighed by your planner and by the board.
We may not have so much spot zoned, but have we challenged zoning to such a degree that we have developments that challenge or create so many variances that it creates a hardship? Or it may, as a planning board, require us to reevaluate what we're doing in certain areas that are challenging or are causing us to allow developments that are stressing, you know, are requiring variances, so many variances. And I think that's the issue that I see.
No, it's a good point. And if I can just clarify what I see your question being is, have we allowed a few developments or a couple or even one or two that have become so intrusive that we're giving away too many waivers that we would have, or people are now seeing this as a development area that's come in? The answer is I don't see that yet. I haven't really seen a zone in this town that is starting to take off so far. The train is moving so fast away from the station that it's fundamentally changing an area. There have been a couple developments where you can see where it is being developed. However, the nature of those areas has not gotten so far away from what they were before. It's a little different, and taken over by the bridge there. But that is still fundamentally, they were still fundamentally commercial areas, you know, maybe going a little bit bigger, maybe going a little bit different, but has the nature of the area changed? And, you know, the real question is, has it gotten so far away that it hasn't? I don't see that yet.
Okay, so you wouldn't say North Teaneck Road, North Teaneck has not seen a substantial change in the nature based upon so many developments that are challenging variances to the.
From what was there before, not really, right? Because you're not knocking down 10 one-family homes to get into a big, I'm not saying that developments aren't big, and that's what we're here for, right? Control what gets built there. But the nature of those areas was still roughly about the same. A little bit more commercial, a little bit more multi-dwelling, a little bit more multi-family. The nature of what's being built there is still within those areas, in those ideas. So the question that comes to you is, maybe we want, as a board, not to allow those applications, or I should change how I say that, to review those applications, but we need to make sure that we're not letting that get away. But do we need to review the master plan to control that? And I don't think the answer is yes. Totally understand, but that's for the board to listen to the applications.
I'm sorry, go ahead. So, for example, in a lot of the cases and a lot of the developments that have been proposed, have been approved, or maybe in the pipeline, there is a municipal land use law which the Board of Adjustment needs to sort of like adhere to as their guide,
Yeah.
and they have to objectively determine that the advantages outweigh the disadvantages, or it's an inherently beneficial
Right.
use. But that's what the land use law is there for. Actually, just as an example, I don't want to state an opinion, but I'm saying you talk about the development at 1500 Teaneck Road. Prior building there was a commercial, empty commercial building, likely was not going anywhere. I'm not going to comment as to the size of the project, but the project is an improvement to the, and I think that's what the board saw.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I would go a little step further to say that when you take a commercial area and then you develop that into a multifamily dwelling, the nature of the area isn't so fundamentally changed that it requires us to take the master plan and say, well, maybe we should rethink the area. And that's kind of where I'm trying to get to, is has the nature changed that we need to review the entire master plan? Is this something that needs, that the zoning should be changed? Should we change it to multi-residential? Should we get rid of commercial? That's what you're doing in your master plan in your full exam. Are you asking yourself the question, is this something now where maybe the area has changed in such a degree that we should sit down and say, maybe this should be changed? And again, you do that. No one's not saying we haven't done it. We do it all the time in reviewing areas. We have overlay zones placed in. We just did the one with the house over on 17, the house in the building. We've said to them, hey, listen, it's a commercial zone. It's a little house. That's not the spot for it. That's not the spot for it. We need to weigh that. And then we bring in someone who doesn't change it over, we bring in a planner because that needs to change. That area is not good for it. Is it time to review master plan? I don't see it yet.
Okay,
Years ago, the zoning was changed, correct me if I'm wrong. The zoning on Cedar Lane was changed from retail, from one-story retail to potentially three or four.
I think three, two residential.
One and then two, or whatever it
Maybe
is.
three,
Okay,
I think
two or
it was
three,
four.
whatever. And nothing happened.
By the way, just so you know, it gives the opportunity for that. It doesn't happen overnight. When you change the zone, it takes time for it. It doesn't mean it happens the next day.
Right. And
You also have,
Well, the market hasn't dictated.
right, you also have on West Englewood Avenue, a 5-story. Nobody did 5-story there either.
Zoning
Yeah.
is also used for encouragement to bring change.
Right.
okay, but does that
Let's
change,
change those down overnight.
if the master plan calls for 6 stories in a commercial area, how can we justify 15 stories? How can we even entertain that? If you're saying the master plan is fine, it's what we've decided as a township we want to see in terms
Master
of
plan.
responsible development, how can we even entertain projects that are 15 stories?
Because the master plan is telling you that, listen, this is what is what was considered in that area. The application, every application that comes to you sits on its own. And if you don't want 15 stories there, don't vote for it. If you want to challenge that 15 stories, do not vote for it.
Well,
It is not-
I wanted to say something. You can never create a zone that can cover every single property. So you create a zone that you think is at the average, but there's always an exception to a rule where one could create higher, one should be lower, but you create for the average. I'll just give you an example. I was in the restaurant, catering business. So your busiest day of the week and your slowest day of the week. So a restaurant that should have 120 seats for its busiest day of the week, but 40 seats for its slowest day of the week, they build it with 80 seats. Because you can't afford to build it with 120 because you go out of business, because it just doesn't work the numbers. So you build it on the average.
So
And then-
you call that a happy medium?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
So therefore, there may be an exception to a rule by the dynamics of a property, let's say, where, and again, I don't know if it's right for 15, but let's say this applicant believes because, and I was talking about the building, and I don't know if it's 15, it may be 12, it may be 8, and it may only be the 5 or 6, but because it's on the bridge and on the train tracks or where it is, in that corner of that thing, it can carry a higher, taller area, while in the center, everything else on the regular road, everything else is different. So that might be the exception, that's 120, while in the heart of somewhere else, it's not. And that's, but you can't make the whole zone for that because everywhere else you can't. That's where you get a waiver, that's where you come for exception. That's where you, same way where home says, I have a hardship. I'm by a bus stop, I'm in a corner and this and that. I can't be like everybody else. I have these hardships, so I need something different. While everybody else can handle it, I can't. And that's why the Board of Adjustment gives them that waiver, but from another house, they'll say no. And when the neighbor comes and says, you gave it to them, why can't? Well, they can, they're different than you.
Sure.
And that's why you can say yes to one and no to another.
Right, and I totally understand that. I think one of the concerns that I have is that when you go to the Board of Adjustment meetings and you listen to the community push back on 100 State Street, it seems like the conversation always comes back to this board and the master plan. And I think it shines a light on us as a board to determine, what that range is, what that extreme is to say, okay, maybe the zoning allowed for 9 units, but was 64 too much? Was there a happier median?
You can't legislate that.
You can't, and I'm not saying legislate, I'm saying you just have to ask that question because, believe it or not, when you go to these Board of Adjustment meetings, the finger's pointing back to this board, like the planning board has to makes the decision as to what's acceptable and so on and so forth. So I feel as if it's great we're having this conversation. It's great that you've done this analysis. I just think that we have to ask ourselves, what is that happy medium, using your example? What's that midway point?
In answer to your initial question, though, it's not a matter of can we put limits on what's requested, 15 stories or 50 stories. An applicant can ask for whatever they want. It can be the size of the Empire State Building. I would tend to think that the amount of variances required for that would not be approved. It's as simple as that. So literally ask for anything you want. It may or may not be granted, and the determination's made, hopefully based upon a lot of what's in the master plan being used as guidance. Do we have aberrations from that? Some of them, I think, regrettably so, and others seem to be within the confines of reasonable. And that's what we determine both here and the Board of Adjustment.
And your master plan too is giving you now that guidance. When these applications do come in, they're huge and taller, and that is to what's being waived. This board cannot, unfortunately, I'm pretty bright, but I'm not God. I can't see so far. Well, I think,
Not to
but
that.
I think I'm not.
You're being modest.
But neither is your plan. So all your planner can do is say, hey, listen, this is the best we can give you. There's no way for you to try to come up with a plan to curb that. In fact, if you did that, it might be illegal. If you start saying, hey, listen, there's too many developments over here, we're going to change the zoning, that actually might be illegal by trying to artificially stop that. So you also have to watch, there's a flip to that coin. You'll be sitting in litigation for the next 5 years, for the next 10-story application, you can stop it. Especially if there are things already in the works.
These are the type of discussions that took place during the major master plan conversations as to what was the right thing and what to try to do. When we talked about 4-story, 5-story, this thing, that thing, to try to find out what was the right way to go and in which direction and where. And we had areas even that we ended up doing nothing with, to this point. I mean, just to bring up, it's a sort of topic, that's why we never went back with it. We left American Legion Drive to be determined, we know what today do with it.
We fixed that since.
Huh?
We rezoned that since 8-story build, 8-story? No.
Chuck, I'll ask you the question. Did anything ever get done with it?
Yes.
Is it zoned?
That's,
American Legion Drive rezoned?
Yes.
I'm in the public, I can't respond.
I'm giving you permission, I said.
No.
That's the first time Chuck did not want to speak.
Oh, you want me to speak?
I asked a question.
Okay.
I give you permission to answer the question.
Okay.
What, yes or no, was American Legion Drive rezoned? Yes or no?
It was not rezoned at 8, it was not rezoned at 8 stories. That was not what happened.
It wasn't rezoned.
It was rezoned.
That's all.
And the planner, incidentally, has said unequivocally that the 6 projects going forward on State Street should not
I'm not talking that.
go in the future. I'm reading, but.
I don't want to American Legion Drive. It was yes or no question. That's it. 3 minutes are up.
Another 3 minutes are not answered.
Mr. Organic, question?
Just to review, so any of the big developments, the 6 or 7 big developments we've had, they're all in a commercial or multi-family zone or overlay right
I would
now.
have to review that, but the answer shooting from the hip is that they are.
So to redo the master plan now, you're saying if we were to create